Welcome to the Story from Shadows. If you crave true horror stories, subscribe now and join our community of the brave. Now, let's get into our first story.
My father left before I was even born. It was my mother who raised me alone against the world. I was 10 years old that Christmas. My mother, Erica, had just finished preparing dinner. It was simple: mashed potatoes, roast chicken, and his special apple pie. She had two jobs. Christmas Eve was one of the few nights she could sit down and smile a little. The lights on the tree flickered red and green, like little stars reflected in the windows. I remember her beaming face when she handed me a sugar cane and said, "Merry Christmas, my little man." Everything was fine until there was a knock on the door. It was almost 00. Deke, Mom frowned. "It's strange that it can be so late. We won't do it any harder this time." "Stay here," Noah whispered before going to the door. "Which is that? Oh. Merry Christmas, madam. A delivery for your family." My mother's brow furrowed. I didn't order anything. My mother looked through the peephole, and I saw her face pale, her eyes wide. But before she could speak, the man outside started banging on our door like a desperate one. I screamed, not understanding what was happening. My mother told me to hide, but I was paralyzed with fear. After a few hard knocks, our door gave way. Mom hugged me, and we backed into a corner, seeing a man in a bloody Santa suit enter, his eyes seeming empty as if absent. That's how we greet Santa. He grunted. In his gloved hand gleamed a long kitchen knife under the Christmas lights. Mom pushed the table against him, knocking down cornoa plates. I froze. The man leapt, knocking the table over as if it weighed nothing. Mom grabbed my arm and pulled me into the kitchen. We ran, her bare feet sliding on the ground, my sugar cane still in my hand. She suddenly opened the door of the guard. "Quickly, yeet in." We huddled together, surrounded by cereal boxes and flower skins. She closed the door and pressed her hand to her mouth, whispering, "Don't make a noise." Through the slats I saw her prowling in the kitchen. "I know you're hiding. Santa Claus sees everything." Mom was shaking, but her eyes were bright. She looked out the back window, a few feet from the pantry. It was small, the kind that opens barely enough for a child to fit in. As soon as the man's footsteps receded towards the cellar, Mama guided me to the window, kissed me on the forehead, and whispered, "Listen to me, baby. You need to get out that window and run to the neighbors. Don't stop. Don't turn around. Tell them to call the police." "No, Mom," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Come with me." She shook her head, tears in her eyes as well. "I won't pass. Just do what Mommy says, okay?" I climbed on the counter and pushed the window open. The cold hit my face like blades. I turned around, and there I saw him. A shadow moving behind me. "Mom!" The man comes out of the basement door, grabs her from behind. The knife gleamed as he pulled it back, laughing. "Where are you two going? Christmas has just started. She's here now. Noah is going away." But the man grabbed me by the collar then, trying to pull me too, but Mom wouldn't let him. She kept kicking. She clawed at his face, blood running down his cheek. As she pulled a handful of his hair, the man screamed in rage and let go of me, turning all his fury on her. I fell into the snow and ran barefoot through the garden behind me. I could hear glass breaking, furniture breaking, and my mother screaming. The neighbor's house was 2 doors away. I knocked on the door. When Harris opened, I was shaking so hard I couldn't speak. "A man, Mom, is injured. Called the police." He called 911 immediately. I remember hiding under their tree while they locked the doors and turned off the lights. The sirens came a minute later, but it seemed to last for hours. When the police arrived at our house, they found the front door broken and the living room trashed. The Christmas tree was toppled, broken decorations scattered on the floor. The man, dressed as Santa Claus, lay unconscious by the fireplace, bleeding from the head. Mom had hit her with the heavy brass candlestick from the fireplace. Police said she fought like a lioness, but did not survive. They found her slumped next to him, the knife still stuck in her side. She had lost too much blood before help arrived. The cops found a picture of me crumpled in his palm. In her final moments, she thought of me. It's been 2 decades since that night. Officers later informed me that the man had fled a psychiatric hospital nearby and had stolen the Santa outfit at a drive hours before entering our home. He survived the blow to the head, but has been confined to a secure facility ever since. Sometimes, I wonder if he remembers what he did that night in our house, the horror he brought. But most of all, I wonder if Mom realized how brave she was then, sacrificing herself so I could live. Christmas music now feels unbearable to me. Every night I ask him why those who want to stay must leave, why the ones who truly care are the ones we lose. The questions haunt me, lingering in my heart. When my father left and never returned, disregarding Mom or her son, it broke us. And yes, the one who gave everything to her son met such a harsh fate. How can life be so unforgiving? Christmas in our home used to be quiet and warm, just the 3 of us. Mom, Dad, and me. Small parties filled with movies, board games, laughter, and pretending to enjoy Mom and Dad's overcooked cookies. That Christmas felt strange. Dad announced a guest would be joining us, a cousin from his mother's side whom he hadn't seen in years. His name was George. When George arrived, he seemed peculiar. Tall, bulky, thinning gray hair. His fixed gaze and excessive blinking unsettled me. He carried an old trench coat and a basic duffel bag, his presence tinged with oddity. "Dylan, I've heard so much about you," he said, pulling me into an uncomfortable hug before I could react. His breath lingered too close, and I pulled away, forcing a strained smile. Mom exchanged a puzzled look with Dad, who merely shrugged. Dinner was tense as George spoke non-stop, his words filling the awkward silence. George frequently asked me odd questions. My age, if I had a girlfriend. His intent gaze as he asked left me uneasy. His eyelids flickered rapidly like wings, making his face eerily unsettling. At one point, he reached out to touch my hair and said, "You have strong features. You remind me of someone." I muttered an excuse and backed away, retreating to my room. Mom called out, asking if I was fine. I lied, saying I was just tired, but the truth was, I despised him. I stayed locked in my room, headphones on, trying to block out the sounds from downstairs. Sleep came eventually, but just after midnight, I woke up. Faint footsteps drew near, hesitating right outside my door. My stomach churned with unease. The handle turned slowly, and the door creaked open. There, silhouetted by the light of the corridor, stood Uncle George. He was wearing a Santa suit, not a cheap one. She looked old and dusty, her beard hung crooked, and in her hands he held a red bag. "What are you doing?" stammering. He smiled as he approached. "Santa Claus brought a present for his favorite boy. You have to go," I say. His voice trembling, he ignored me, put down the bag, dipped his hand into it, and pulled out a small wrapped box. He handed it to me again, blinking frantically. "Merry Christmas, Dylan. I've been waiting a long time to give you this. I haven't moved." My heart was beating so hard it hurt. He took another step, then another. "Come on," he murmured. "Just one more hug for Santa." That's when I screamed, a ripping scream coming straight out of my chest. Mom and Dad came running, the light in the hallway came on, and my father's voice thundered. "What are you doing here?" George flinched but did not back away. His hands trembled now, his wavering smile. "It doesn't matter. he says softly. He knows me. We've always been close. Papa jumped up and pushed him back violently. Get out of my house, George. Mom grabs my arm, pulling me out of bed. I could barely breathe. George's Santa hat fell off as he staggered toward the door. His face was pale, his gaze vague. You don't understand, he muttered, staring at me. I've known him since he was born. Yell at Daddy again. Get out before I call the cops. George stepped back, smiling faintly, teeth yellow and crooked. You've always been my favorite. Dylan says you always have been. Then he turned around and walked out like that, down the stairs, through the front door in the snow. Dad locked it behind him and immediately called the police. When the agents arrived, George was gone. They searched the area and patrolled the neighborhood, but there was no sign of him. His car was still parked outside, engine cold, but the driver's seat empty. The sports bag he had brought was also gone. One of the police officers stayed to take statements. I was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, my hands shaking. Mom cried in the kitchen while Dad explained what he knew. Not much. He said George had called him, introducing himself as a distant cousin who had gone abroad. He seemed harmless, just a lonely old man trying to reconnect. My father never doubted, but when the police checked, no George with our name existed in our family records, either on Dad's side or anywhere else. No ID, no trace, nothing. The box George had tried to give me was still on my nightstand. The officer took it as evidence but allowed my parents to open it later. Inside, a picture of a newborn, wrapped in a blue blanket with a scrawled back. Dylan, 2008, my year of birth. We didn't know where it came from. My parents claimed that the photo was not from them. It wasn't even taken at the hospital where I was born. For weeks I saw flashes of that night, his face, the red suit, his voice. When he said my name, I slept with the light until February. The police never found him. Sometimes I tell myself he was just a crazy person who went to the wrong house, but I know that's not true. He knew too much. He knew me. I will never forget the Christmas sleepover when I was 12. It had to be perfect. Hot chocolate, matching pajama movie, and laughing with friends until 12 o'clock. My father had done the maximum that year. He put lights on the porch, hung stockings by the fireplace, and rented a snow machine for the garden. My best friends, Emily and Harper, arrived around 6 p.m. We baked cookies, turned the kitchen upside down, and built a cover fort. Everything in the living room seemed warm and cozy and secure. Around 00 on 12, in our fort in front of Mom, I missed plane 2. Emily froze and whispered that there was someone at the window. Harper and I turned to the window. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I saw him just behind the frosted window, standing by the trees at the back of the garden. A man. He was wearing a Santa costume. He didn't move, right there watching us. His face glowed red from the garlands on the fence, making him even more creepy. Harper laughed nervously, saying Dad might be trying to scare us. I really wanted to believe it. But Dad was upstairs folding the laundry, and that motionless figure didn't seem like a joke. We ran to the stairs and called her Daddy. There's someone outside. He came right down, half smiling, like we were exaggerating. Lils, it's probably a neighbor walking his dog, but when he looked out the window, the man was gone. See, Dad said, just shadows playing tricks. We went back to the fort, but no one could concentrate on the film. The slightest crack made us jump. I was trying to look brave for my friends, but deep down, this image of Santa in the snow haunted me. About half an hour later, something else was heard. A thud, then another from above, then long, deliberate footsteps on the roof. Harper screamed. Emily began to cry. I was frozen, staring at the ceiling. Dad burst out of his room screaming, "What's going on?" He was told someone was on the roof. He grabbed his jacket and flashlight, muttering something about raccoons, and ran outside. We watched out the front window as he walked around the house, the beam of his flashlight piercing the snow. Then everything went silent. A minute later, I heard a slight squeak. It came from the attic. I felt my heart stop. "Did you hear that?" I whispered before he could answer. A scratching sound came from above, as if something or someone was crawling into the attic. We screamed for Dad. He came running back, his boots dripping, his lamp shaking in his hand. We huddled in the hallway and watched my dad come down the attic ladder. The cold air hit us from above. I'll never forget Dad's face when he pointed the lamp up. His voice dropped into a whisper that opened the window. We all froze. There was a small round window in the attic and it was pushed out. Snowflakes were coming in and snow tracks led from the window into the darkness of the attic. Dad's voice was shaking when he said, "I'm calling the police." Before they got here, Dad got under the attic with a baseball bat. He sensed someone was in the attic. When the police finally arrived, they searched the property, starting with the attic. They stayed there maybe 5 minutes before one of them screamed that someone was hiding behind the old boxes. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help myself. They took a man down the ladder, our neighbor. He was wearing a Santa coat, the hat still on his head, and his hands handcuffed behind his back. His face was pale and sweaty, his eyes moving as if he were looking for a way out. Dad stood there, speechless. The Harlan had always seemed harmless, the quiet, solitary guy who greeted us when we picked up the mail. Sometimes he would bring us cookies or offer to clear our driveway. I never imagined that The officer opened the bag they found with him. Inside were our clothes, pajamas, socks, and even underwear. They also found a Polaroid with a stack of photos taken without our knowledge. Harlan would photograph us as we changed and hide in the attic to set up a camera in my room. When the cops asked him why, he smiled and said, "Santa always watches nice girls." The whole room went silent. Dad put his hand on my shoulder and hugged me. I've never seen him so pale. I could feel him trembling with anger and disbelief. After taking Mr. Harlan away, the police stayed for a while, retrieving the cameras and taking prints. No one slept that night. Dad stayed with us until dawn, checking the locks every few minutes, apologizing incessantly, saying he should have believed us. That he should have noticed something sooner. At about 6:30 in the morning, the first light of Christmas Day crept through the blinds. Harper and Emily's parents came to pick them up. Dad made pancakes, but I couldn't eat them. I kept thinking about that red suit and his boots on the roof and Harlan's creepy smile. Later that day, a detective called to say Harlan had been doing this for years. Breaking into homes, filming families, and collecting souvenirs. They found dozens of tapes of young girls and boys in his basement. I didn't dare go up to the attic for months. Even now, 2 years later, I still can't sleep. When I hear the house creak at night every Christmas, when the lights twinkle on the roof, my chest tightens.